Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to Reading League of Women Voters' 4th annual Speak Up. My name is Kim O'Reilly, and I have the pleasure of serving as president of the Reading League. We are very pleased to bring this opportunity to our community where town residents can ask their questions and have an open dialogue with our town elected and appointed officials. Although we cannot see our fellow audience members on this Zoom webinar, I understand that there are over 60 people attendance in this evening. We are so pleased to have such a great turnout and are very thankful to our public servants who have dedicated this evening to hearing from you. I'm very pleased to welcome our panelists. I'm just going to bring out your names and they'll have a chance to introduce themselves a little bit later. But first of all, Julia Pemberton, our first selectman, Ward Mizuko, Board of Finance Vice Chair, Reading Police Chief Mark O'Donnell, Easton Reading Region 9 Assistant Superintendent Stephanie Ugal, Doug Hartline, our very important health officer. He got more and more important over the last several years. Thank you, Doug, for all your work. Michelle Grandy, who is our town clerk, who you have no idea how many things she does for all of us. Megan Eli, our registrar of voters. And Megan, who's with you? Is that
It's Sarah Baker here. She is also the
Sarah
registrar.
Baker, our other registrar. Sarah is the Republican designated registrar and Megan is the Democratic designated registrar. And also joining us will be Rob Blick, our Park and Rec director, and Angelica Fontanez, director of human services. So welcome everyone. Following our opening remarks, the majority of tonight's event will be devoted to open question and answer forum, where we will be inviting you, our audience members, to ask your questions live. Before we proceed, I just want to extend a big thank you to our Speak Up team from the Board of Directors, Lori Heiss, Margaret Brown, and Cole Tucker Walker. Thank you so much for all your help in getting ready for this event. And Cole also is managing all our technology for this evening. And special thanks as well to Colleen Joyce, who is our moderator for this evening. So I'm going to always do a little commercial for the league, in case you haven't seen me before. For those of you who are not familiar with the Reading League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan organization that works to educate voters and encourage active participation in the political process. The mission of the league is to empower voters and defend democracy. Well, many of you may be familiar with our annual candidate debates and our voter registration drives. You may not know about some of the other things we do. We host a variety of community forums and speaker events to increase our collective understanding of major public policy and community issues that affect our lives. We also have been very involved over the past years in the Open Space Initiative here in Reading, in different school improvement issues, land use issues, and actually in looking at our mental health services here in town, which help fund, bring our social service director here in a full-time position. I just want to mention before we go on about one of our programs that we have focused on over the last 2 years during the pandemic. It's our speaker series that we've done in partnership with the Mark Twain Library called Conversations, Truth, Myth, and Democracy. This series is a grassroots effort that examines the underlying meaning of our democracy and how democracy matters even when we have different ideas about what it should look like. So we've had several of these events where over 3,000 people have participated, either watching live or watching the recording afterwards. So if you haven't had a chance to see any of these sessions, I really invite you to watch them on the Mark Twain Library YouTube channel. They've been very thought-provoking and present a balanced views of an issue. We've really striven to bring different point of views to these discussions. So finally, in our 68th year as an active community organization in Reading, I would like to invite anybody who's not a member here to join us. We're a wonderful group of women and men. Yes, we are an equal opportunity organization, or although our name does not indicate that. We have 3 wonderful male board members, in fact. And so if you're interested in becoming a member, I believe Cole is going to put up our membership form. We'll also send some information out after tonight's webinar. It's a wonderful group, and I really do encourage you to get involved and help us make a difference in our community. So with that, I'd like to proceed and introduce our moderator for this evening, who is Colleen Joyce. Colleen is an appointed director on the Reading League of Women Voters Board and has been a Reading resident for over 24 years. She is a practicing attorney and has 4 grown children, all of whom went through the Reading schools and graduated from Joe Barlow High School. Thank you, Colleen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Our goal is to enable the residents to raise questions of concern that they have and to give our panelists the opportunity to answer those questions in this very nice, somewhat public forum, virtually. As a moderator, it's my job to be sure that we engage in civil discourse, and we want you to have better understanding, but we also want everyone to remain respectful. I don't see any problem with that, but just so you know, if anyone violates that, we'll just mute your microphone. Okay, we're going to begin by asking each of the panelists to take a minute to just give a little bit background about themselves and also maybe a success or a challenge or some information they would like to share. Following that, we'll set up with the questions and we'll explain how that's done. So first, we'll ask Julia Pemberton.
Hi. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, everyone who is here for the League Speak Up. My name is Julia Pemberton, and I have been first select woman of the town of Reading for 8 years. So I'm into my 9th year, and I've really enjoyed representing you here in Town Hall as your first select woman. I've lived in town for 32 years, 3 children who went through the schools. And certainly the last 2 years have been very challenging. We've had some successes and some challenges, but if I had to say, we've gotten through COVID with the help of an amazing team, including Doug Hartline and all the residents who really pulled together. We've got control of the Gilbert and Bennett wire mill, and we've completed a $1 million plus public safety radio communications project. So those are all good things. Gilbert and Bennett will be a challenge, and I look forward to talking more about that.
Thank you. Chief O'Donnell. You need to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Chief Mark O'Donnell. I've been with the police department for 37 years, and the last 4 as a chief. And like Julia said, it's had a little bit more challenges the last couple of years, but we got through it. I'm going to go over some of the outreach things that we do that people may not know about in the department. We participate in a No Shave November, which 100% of the proceeds go to cancer victims in Connecticut. We do St. Baldrick's, which we just did recently with John Reed Middle School. That's another one that goes to proceeds go to cancer. We do a Blue Santa, which is holiday gifts and for people that are in need within the community. We do a Stuff a Cruiser with Newtown Police. We combine with them at Big Y, and all the donations go to their food pantry and ours. We offer police department tours. We haven't did it because of COVID, but we were doing coffee with a cop, and that was at Reading Ridge Market. We do college member mentorships. We'll take 2 or 3 college students. They get 3 credit hours, and they come in and they learn what it's like to be a police officer to supplement their criminal justice, whatever they're going to college for. We donate ride-alongs. We just started a department Instagram to supplement our department website. That's run by Sergeant Michael Livingston, and he's doing a really good job with that. We also do a mock crash every other year. We started doing it, I think it was 3 years ago at Joe Barlow, and we couldn't do it the last couple of years because of the pandemic. We do that like every other year, and then we're concentrating on the juniors this year, and then our normal speeding and traffic enforcement and things. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions as we go along about anything that I just touched on or anything that you want to ask.
Thank you. Stephanie Ugal.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I first want to pass on the regrets of our new superintendent of schools, Dr. Jason McKinnon, who was not able to participate this evening. But I'm pleased to be here. And I have been associated with the Reading schools in some form for almost 15 years. First as the principal of Reading Elementary School, and for almost 10 years as the assistant superintendent of schools for Easton Reading in Region 9. I feel tremendously fortunate to be part of a community that is so much about all the right things. We're here for children, for one another, and having worked in many high-performing, excellent communities in Connecticut, I can honestly say that Reading is a very special place to grow up. I feel as if this is a place where we truly let kids be kids. And that's so important, especially in today's world. My message this evening is one of hope. I think that we've certainly been through quite a bit in the last 2 years. And while many of the effects of COVID have been detrimental and tough for students, for staff, for families, I do think that we are stronger than ever as a result of what we've been through together. I think that our students may have missed some of the academic and interpersonal activities and encounters that are so much a part of the learning experience. They are emerging as resilient, strong, thoughtful learners. And I think that not all of the effects of what we've been through have been negative. But we are working through, we are coming out stronger. We're so happy to be able to be unmasked once again, to welcome parents and volunteers back in our school buildings, and to get back to doing what we do so well.
Thank you. Ward Mizuko.
Thank you, Colleen, Kim, Cole, and the rest of the league board for inviting the Board of Finance to participate. Unfortunately, our chair, Kim Yonkers, was unable to attend, so I'm afraid you all have to settle for me as vice chair. I've been a member since 2009. I've lived in Reading since 1988. My 3 kids went all through the Reading schools, K through 12. And I'm very pleased to be a member of the Board of Finance and to represent the group here tonight. It consists of 6 members from really all different professional backgrounds. We each serve 6-year terms. We attend probably 15 to 20 meetings per year. And the function for which we are best known is reviewing the town budget and the Reading school budget, but I might add not the Region 9 budget before they go to the voters. And if there's one message that I'd like to deliver tonight, it's that there's an opportunity for all voters in the community to vote on the budget May 3rd, I believe, the first Tuesday in May. In addition to reviewing those budgets, we, based on what the voters see fit to spend, we figure out how to pay for it all through taxes and the fees collected by town agencies like the building department and the town clerk. We deal with the level of reserves or savings that the town ought to maintain. We work very hard to maintain the town's AAA credit rating so that when a town has to issue bonds to borrow for public projects, we can be assured of paying the lowest interest rate possible. So in one sense, we probably have the broadest portfolio of any boards and commissions in the community. And we're very pleased to work with all the rest of our partners in that mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Angelica Montanez?
I thank you for the invitation for this evening. I'm the Director of Social Services, and I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field for almost 22 years now, and I've been working for the town 6 years. This time has been going very quickly, and you can imagine all the challenges we've been confronting here, with the increase in financial hardship, mental health crisis, which I work very closely with the police department, and the issues of isolation for the past 2 years that was impacted by COVID. But I've also seen resiliency, generosity, and a strong sense of community, and that has really impacted our you have seen it in social services and with our senior programs. In regards to social services, there's been an increase of expansion of various programs. I've been working closely with United Way. At first, I started off prior to COVID, as an enrichment grant for after-school activities and programs, or music and art programs for our families that are living like paycheck to paycheck. And that program has expanded. First, I started off like a $1,000 grant, and now it has gone up to about maybe $4,000 to $5,000 in grant funding. And I also have been working closely with Salvation Army, and that's more of a comprehensive emergency funds for anything regarding a medical bill, car taxes, because if someone is not able to register their car, it's very hard for them to be able to work. So they've been able to use those kind of fundings for things I can normally use it through the town social services funds, such as energy assistance, electricity, or the food pantry. And I've also expanded with the Brennison Trust, which is a special grant for seniors to keep them comfortable in their home. And that could be anything from a dentist bill or a particular medical bill that's not covered through Medicare. And I received various donations from private donors, from the church groups and organizations. There's been a lot of hands-on volunteer services. When COVID first hit, there were a lot of programs that I was able to get the youth to work closely with the seniors to either bring them a meal or to help them with the groceries, because there was a lot of fear of going out and about. So it was very nice to see how the whole community got together and how different generations were able to work together. So, you see a lot of optimism and hope during these rough times. And with the senior center, our programs have increased. The seniors have not slowed down since we've been able to open our doors. We have an almost, hopefully, full-time senior program coordinator. And this is the first year that we've been able to get grants through the state and private grants as well. We were able to get a grant through Ridgefield, out of all places, through their Meals on Wheels. They shared with us a small grant for our senior lunches. And our senior program coordinator was able to coordinate with the local restaurants and local vendors to be able to provide lunches to our seniors. And what was nice about that particular program was we had about like 25 seniors that came through our doors, and seniors that normally that wouldn't come through our doors. And some seniors that were referred to me due to isolation, and they were really nervous to come to the senior center. They're like, I've never been there. I'm really anxious. I don't like leaving my home, the whole COVID situation. So it was really nice to be able to get people out of their home and to come to the senior center and find a safe place and to be able to socialize. And we also had another wellness program, which was a very unique program. It was called Taiji Kwan. It's a balance program. And we received a grant through the state, to the Agency on Aging. And what was interesting about that particular one was we were able to see seniors who were like 90 and up coming to our senior center for exercise. And that was amazing to be able to see that. I mean, some was virtual, some was in person. And it was a big commitment because it was like 12 to 14 weeks commitment to be able to continue with the grant. And we were able to get another grant. So we have the advanced Taiji Kwan. Now we have a new beginners program. And I think we had about 20 people sign up for that program. So there's been a real increase on wellness. And we had a few other music and arts programs as well. And those have, have been increasing, and the participation has been wonderful. And it's just been wonderful to see the resiliency amongst the seniors, where they were a little scared to come to their senior centers. And once they've been here, even with the mask on, mask off, and all the changes, to be able to see that, the sense of community and the energy that's been taking place, both social services and the senior center.
Wow, thank you. Doug Hartline.
Good evening. My name is Doug Hartline. I'm the health officer for the town of Reading. I've been working for the town for 34 years. And normally a health department is mainly involved with septic systems and drinking water and inspecting of restaurants. But obviously 2 years ago, that health department duty really expanded quite a bit into COVID, which was quite an uncharted territory. There was no playbook for COVID, as we all well know. But I was thankful that when we put the call out for volunteers, a lot of people raised their hand. A lot of people contacted me, to the point where I had a list of volunteers where we couldn't really use everybody. But we also we were able to get those who are qualified to vaccinate in town to help with vaccinating those who came to the clinic. So it was quite a reassuring feeling to know that you put the call out for volunteers and the phone rings. It's just wonderful. I was very, very happy about that. And that is Reading. It's a great town. We're also able to get to know our partners well, as Angelica was mentioning about. We had to do a lot of decision-making with Region 9. I'd like to put out a big thank you to our Director of Health, Dr. Leibowitz, who's also a medical advisor, and also the Easton Director of Health, and also their medical advisor. Were making some very, very tough decisions where there is no playbook. Again, they just had to make those tough decisions. And I'm so thankful that they were there for us and providing their time. So be happy to answer any questions that might come up later on. And that's it.
Thank you. Michelle Grandy, Town Clerk.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. My office takes care of lots of things that people never think about, but we do everything from land recordings to vital records, licensing, elections, agendas and minutes. My office also handles the town website for postings and everything else in between. So COVID, we had our challenges also. I'm happy to say that we managed to put a lot of our services online. What wasn't online, we took care of outside at the picnic table under my blue canopies, which unfortunately blew away in one of the storms. So we no longer have those, but we're open and back in business, and only a phone call away. I would encourage everyone to, in order to keep up on the activities of the town and the agendas and minutes, to go to our website and subscribe to news and announcements and any agendas that they would like to receive. I send out a blast every Thursday. I try and include as much as I can from any organization that sends things to me. Since we don't have a newspaper, although we do have a newspaper coming into effect very soon now, so that will be helpful. But in the meantime, for online news, I would encourage you to go to our website and sign up for that.
Thank you. Rob Blick, I see that you now have two locations, but you're only in one, but we'd still like to hear.
Actually, I left my notes in the other room. I was having a bad connection. Could you go to somebody else and I'll go grab my notes?
Oh, sure, no problem. Okay, so we have the registrars here, fortunately. So we have Megan, Ely, and Sarah Baker, and they're going to give you a little background on what they do.
Hi, everyone. We have a couple additions here. So if you see someone running or screaming, that's either Sarah's child or my child. So the Registrar of Voters are responsible for registering new voters, maintain voter registration records, and enrollment records, publish lists for eligible voters, conduct a state required canvass for all voters, compile monthly reports of all the activities concerning voters in town.
We're also responsible for maintaining accurate, up-to-date lists of all registered voters in town. We also oversee town meetings, elections, primaries, and referendums.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Rob Blick.
Hi, guys. For some reason, my laptop was cutting out every few minutes. So let me, well, basically, I'm Rob Blick, the Park and Rec Director, and I've been in town, and Reading's a wonderful town. The department runs after school classes, fitness classes, basketball leagues. We organize use of the sports fields and gyms by the town. We maintain the fields. We run special events, and a couple of our biggest programs, as you probably know, is Extended Day, Topstone Park Beach, and our summer camps. We run the Sunday concert series, as well as two other, an acoustic series at the beach, the community garden. It's been great to serve everybody, and we have quite a few challenges that we've had during the last couple of years. Certainly the least of is trying to secure staff. It used to be people were knocking down our doors trying to work at our camps or at the beach, and we sort of have an employee. We have need to fill our positions for the first time in a while. We have supply chain issues, trying to get things and supplies for the camps and things like that. That's pretty much it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions people have.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was very interesting. And now we're going to call on our attendees we're going to open the forum for you to ask questions. And let me just explain the procedure for raising your hand. I'm sure many of you know, but some have different types of computers. So if you're on Zoom on a regular computer, you can see the hand signal is selected by using the reactions button. But if you're on an iPad or an iPhone, the raised hand option is under the area where 3 dots appear and the word more. You have to select the 3 dots and then use the raised hand option. It's either at the top or the bottom of your screen. So this is a time for you to ask questions. When you ask your question, I'm going to ask that you state your name and just your street address. We don't need your actual house address. And then identify who you would like the question to be answered by. If it's more than one, that's fine. We'd like you to, in order to allow a lot of questions, to be somewhat concise in your questioning. And if you have more than one question, just pose the one question you have and then wait in line. This will go in chronological order, and that way everybody has a chance to ask their questions. So we're going to now open this up and let those, the one thing I do want to point out is that this is being recorded. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And now we can go to questions. Okay, we have Sophia Shanahan, and you will be unmuted to ask your question.
Hi, everybody. I was just wondering, it's just general questions, right?
And any kind of question.
Okay. I was wondering if there's an opportunity for Reading to celebrate Pride Month, because I see that Ridgefield has a large celebration, and I know that Easton does, and Bethel has a huge event coming up in May. And I was just wondering if there's an opportunity for Reading to also do something. I know that there are a lot of students at Joel Barlow that feel maybe not the most secure in their LGBTQ status. So I was wondering if as a town we could have an event, even like Rob talked about the Concert on the Greens, like could we do a collaboration with like Concert on the Green and do a pride celebration then or something? Just an idea. And that was all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sophia, I'll take that. So the answer is we could certainly do that. I do have, I had plans to raise the flag on the town green and would be happy to talk with you more about organizing a more formal celebration of Pride Month. And we'd love to have volunteers help with that so we can connect.
Okay, am I still, oh, okay, sorry. That would be awesome. I'll send you an email. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you. We have about 50 attendees, and I'm sure someone has another question. Okay. I don't know if anyone's having trouble with the hand raising. Oh, here we go. Yep. Okay. So Cheryl Cowherd, please state, we know your name, so just state your street address and ask your question. Cheryl.
Hi, I'm at 3 Silversmith Lane, and I would like to know why the town isn't presented the school budget as planned by the school officials and the administration. I would like to know why it's cut before it goes to the public view.
Sounds like a question for me.
Sounds like it's for you, Ward.
Okay. So I'm Ward Mizuko, member of the Board of Finance, and the way our town government is structured is that the Board of Selectmen propose a budget for the town side of activities within the municipality, and the Board of Education proposes a budget for the K through 8 side of the budget. And both of those budgets go by law to the Board of Finance for review. And we are able to increase them, decrease them, or keep them the same before they go to the voters. The whole reason to have a Board of Finance is that we see the big picture in town. We know what our level of debt is. We know how successful or not we've been in collecting taxes. We know how much we have in reserves. We know how much we need to have in reserves to have a good credit rating. We know what capital expenditures are anticipated and how much money we may have to borrow and what that may do to the budget. So because of the sort of unique overall perspective on the finances of the town, we're entrusted with the authority to review those two budgets before they go to the voters. No action has been taken on any budget yet. There is a meeting Monday, April 4th. It'll be on Zoom. There will be an opportunity for public comment. There will be further discussion by the Board of Finance with our partners on the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. And I fully expect that there will be a vote that evening on the final budgets for the town and for the Board of Ed, and also on some capital items. So I should also mention that this culminates several months of preparation, and like other members of the public, we follow the development of the budgets by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, so that we're prepared at this point to deal with them. So I hope that answers your question, and I hope to see you Monday night.
You will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kristen Anstedt.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. We hear you. Oh, go ahead, try again.
Hi there. It muted again on me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Great. This is a question for Ward, actually. Ward, so I've been in town, it'll be 6 years in June, and I've paid pretty close attention. You know that because you've seen me.
Mhm.
And it seems to be year after year, we really kind of have to skin down our Board of Education budget. My question is this. As a town, are we having any conversations on how to increase our tax base outside of just homeowners? Is there a way? I mean, we have a lot of green space and there's a lot going on. And it seems year after year, it is this constant, we can't afford, we need to cut. Taxpayer, obviously people don't want their taxes to go up. But the question is what are we doing as a town, or what are we potentially talking about where we can increase our tax base? Yeah.
Yep. No, Kristen, that's a great question. And it's something that we've been talking about for a long time with the Board of Selectmen, the land use authorities and so forth. But, as a practical matter in Reading, it's a very rural private community, and any efforts to increase a commercial presence is likely to generate concern from the neighbors wherever that commercial development is proposed. Secondly, there's just in terms of land quality, we have the commercial area in West Reading, but there's no sewer service there. So any commercial development would be limited to whatever a septic system could serve. There is an opportunity for considerable commercial development in Georgetown. That is the dream of every office holder in Reading. That proper development in Georgetown can unlock a lot of the potential that you're looking for. But there just isn't a lot of room for commercial development. You might want to talk, if you have any ideas about where that might occur, you might talk to our land use officials to see if they can help in promoting it. But the inherent constraints of the land and the apprehension that we're likely to receive from commercial development are significant constraints. But also back to your broader question, the experience that we have in Reading with the concerns about whether we can afford budgets in any given year is a conversation that happens in every town. I'm not aware of any town in the area where there isn't a robust discussion of how much we can afford. Reading is at the high end of per pupil spending in Durg A, and that naturally would lead anyone to question whether there's an opportunity to deliver education more cost effectively. And I'm also happy to talk about this more online because I know you've been following things for years in Reading, and there's so much more to the conversation than can be addressed in a setting like this.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Julia.
add on to that. So I'll add on to that. Kristen, thank you for your question. So Ward has talked a lot about our land use policies. There are studies that show, and I'll start because you mentioned the open space, that developing the green space, while it may add to our grand list, does not create a situation where, in other words, the cost of maintaining the property in the house as developed outweighs the taxes. And I'm not talking about children. I'm talking about infrastructure, roads, repaving. So let's just take the topic of children off the table, because what I understand is people hear that and they think, oh, you don't want schools. If we have children, fantastic. If we need to build a new school and that's the best thing for the town, wonderful. So that's not what I'm saying. It's just that more development doesn't necessarily mean we'll have more money to spend, because we'll have more services to provide vis-a-vis infrastructure, police, all of the other things that we do. Michelle will have to hire more people in the town clerk's office to file things. We'll need more people in the police department. So there are other associated costs with development. But there are reports on the economic benefits of preserved space. Commercial development, we actually have 7% of our grand list comes from commercial. I think a lot of people don't realize that because it's invisible. It's EverSource. It's wires in the ground. It's substations. EverSource is our largest taxpayer. Just by comparison, I think the commercial tax base in Ridgefield is 11%. So for little small green Reading to have a significant amount of non-residential tax income, that's a good thing. We also have more commercial development going on up Route 7. That old dilapidated DATCO building is being re-envisioned, and there will be a demolition, I believe, of that old hotel and a new hotel. So those will all help to raise the grand list. And we do need more of that, but I think we could certainly look at our existing commercial corridors and see if we can expand around the edges to develop more commercial while we're working through the whole Georgetown matter. So.
Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
We have Margaret Brown.
Hi, Colleen, thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. My question is for Ms. Duval from the schools. I'd just like you to address in a concise way what our schools are doing to address the students' mental health issues that are coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of publicity about this all over the country. And I wonder locally what the elementary schools, the middle school and the high school are doing. If you could address that, please.
I'd be happy to. So students, of course, are the focus of our energy in the schools. And we have been monitoring their needs with respect to mental health as well as their academic needs. And certainly we've seen a much greater need now. While cases of anxiety were certainly on the rise before March of 2020, we've seen that number climb a great deal since then. And so the schools have been responsive in a number of ways. At the elementary level, they spend time every day as a classroom community, first thing in the morning, having a morning meeting, connecting with one another, feeling a part of a community once again, and reestablishing that interpersonal connection that was really missing last year and a part of the year before because of the many different modes of instruction that were taking place all at the same time. Teachers juggling between students at home, as well as being present in the classroom, and feeling as if that the distance that was so necessary to maintain health in our schools certainly had the result of people not feeling connected. So at the elementary school, a lot of it has to do with being together once again as a community and taking the time to listen to students, to respond to their questions, to be responsive to their needs. And you know, we believe that through sustained time of being back together in person as a community, that we will see less of a need in terms of additional mental health support. At the middle school level, in addition to what happens in advisory classrooms, which are, I guess you could call it a sort of a homeroom class, where there are lessons related to problem solving and dealing with organization and workload and sort of how to exist once again in a more typical learning environment. There, our counselors also run many many small groups with students. They also follow a guidance counseling curriculum. So there's a fair amount of intervention with students. At the high school level, they also have an advisory class. So again, that advisory class is not focused on a core academics necessarily, but the students are together in heterogeneous groups with a staff member, a certified staff member who has a dedicated time with them to address the lessons of being at school that aren't necessarily related to core academics. In addition to that, our counselors are running many more small groups than they have in the past. Again, really teaching students the skills of how to move through the difficulties that they're currently experiencing, the sense of social isolation in some cases and increased anxiety that probably were exacerbated by the conditions of the pandemic. Certainly the students' needs, their mental health needs in particular, are very much on our minds. And so we are monitoring those needs very closely. We do see that there's been an improvement since we've been back. And certainly as a person who tries to visit our schools when I can, I think that there is a sense of joy that's present in our hallways and in our classrooms that was just frankly missing in the last couple of years. And I do think a part of that is being less fearful of being close together and the worries that we were going to make each other ill, and then being able to see full faces. I think that's made a big difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sophia Shanahan.
Hi, it's me again. I have two questions, but I'll ask the first one and then I can raise my hand again. I like to refer to myself as the Reading trash girl. So my question is about Reading's litter problem, which I would like to be clear, there is a litter problem. When you drive down specifically Simhog, it's horrendous right now. So I would just like to ask if anyone has any thoughts on opportunities that we could tackle this problem, because I pick up trash every weekend and a majority of the trash is liquor bottles. Now, I would pray that this is not from numerous people drinking and driving, but it is mini Fireball bottles, liquor. It's really disturbing. But I've also heard a theory that the recycling is flying off the top of recycling trucks. So I'm not sure if anybody has any thoughts on that. And then I do have the add on to that for Chief. I was wondering if there's a way to stop the trucks going through Umpqua as a cut through, because I think there's a lot of cut throughs on Umpqua because the GPS just takes people off of it. But I live on Reading Road right off of Umpqua, and I cannot tell you how many times there are oversized trucks driving in the middle of the road. And anyway, those are my two questions. Sorry. Thank you.
Chief O'Donnell.
You want me to address the littering or the?
Both.
We can split it.
Yeah, I won't do the littering. I mean, the littering, the highway department can go pick up some of that. But as far as the trucks on Umpqua, they can go on Umpqua. It all depends on if they're making a delivery. They have the right to make deliveries. If they are using it for, if say there's a triaxle dump truck that's not making a delivery, I'll use that as an example. Yeah, they can't go on there. And they can't use it as a regular route. We certainly would welcome any complaints about it. I could set somebody up over there. We're on Umpqua Road enough for the speeding. They can go on even a road that has no through trucks on it. They can go on it as long as they're not doing it as a routine cut through. That's your point is right on that, and we can address that by setting somebody up in that area we could do it for a week and then you see if there's a normal commuting, it's used as a normal commuting route. I've had somebody call about Amazon delivery trucks I think it was on Stepney Road, and they're making deliveries. So if they're making a legal delivery, that's fine. But if you're correct in your point, if they are using it as a regular routine cut through and a regular commute, they can't do that. So you could fill out a traffic complaint form and you'd send it to me, or you could send it to Sergeant Livingston. He runs he does a lot of my traffic calming things now, and we can certainly address that.
Thank you. Julia, who wants to address the littering issue? Board?
Yeah, actually has nothing to do
Okay.
with the Board of Finance, but I do want to comment on it. And that is because my wife and I participate every year with the Earth Day cleanup in Reading. And it causes us to take a close look, like Sophia does, about at the trash in town. And the astonishing thing is the incredible number of liquor bottles and beer cans that are present on our streets. And yes, the littering is horrible, but what everybody here should be really worried about is the apparent related drunk driving. Every couple of years, we seem to have fatal accidents in town with teenagers, alcohol, a very unhealthy combination, and it just scares the daylights out of me. I'm sure it's a very high priority for the chief, but anything we can do to counteract the consumption of alcohol by minors in town should be a very high priority for all of us.
I can comment on like the liquor bottles. I mean, the DUIs. I mean, I have one officer that made 17 DWIs, in a year. It's definitely addressed. It's so hard to catch somebody throwing, bottles out. Where I live in Monroe, it's a cut through between Route 110 and 111, and I have a hill, and that's the distributing zone for whoever goes by there, whether they throw out little bottles or beer bottles or whoever it is dips. So they throw out their dip thing with their tobacco spin in it. So, but we do definitely address the DUIs. The part of trying to catch somebody littering is so, they're going by, if they're throwing that nip, and it's probably the same, it might even be the same person doing it, who knows? But I know that Umpqua and Simpar were two of the roads that were mentioned to me. And I'm sure there's other ones too, like you were saying.
Okay, thank you. And Julia, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, because Sophia is right. It's forever. It's been the small alcohol bottles and then the e-cigarette cartridges, which when I first started seeing them along the road and picking them up, I didn't know what they were. And then it just exploded. So the solution, Sophia, that the legislature thought would work was to tax the nips, the little nip bottles. So as of October 1st, there's an additional 5-cent surcharge on those little bottles. Obviously, it's not just a Reading problem, it's everywhere, which is why the legislature thought that if they taxed it, that it would reduce the number of these bottles being thrown out the window, because then you could redeem them also for that extra 5 cents. But I'll be curious to see if that has an effect. But like cigarettes, if you want to perhaps reduce it and something like this becomes a scourge, you have to tax it. And I don't like to say that, but it's really hard to change behavior of individuals once there are people who'd never dream of throwing anything out the car window. And unfortunately, there are others who don't think twice about it. But we do the Earth Day pickup, and certainly that's a big annual event. But we could certainly talk about doing a monthly one. I know that a lot of people go out on their own and pick up garbage. I would urge you to be careful. When we do Earth Day, we provide the gloves and the bags, and we also use the yellow vests. So Sophia, if you're out there, I hope you're wearing reflective material, and thank you. Thank you for being out there.
It's pure disrespect.
Sure. I appreciate all of everyone's comments. I would ask Julia or Chief, the last time I picked up, because I usually go out with a group, we use the police's traffic cones to kind of signal cars. But I would wonder if there is an opportunity for the town to maybe purchase some safety vests that we could use, because I have 3 right now that I borrowed from, I say borrowed, I feel bad, I kind of permanently borrowed these vests from the fire department. So maybe if there's a way that we could have like a box, a pickup box at the police department where we have the vests and some trash bags, and then we can just, you know, let the community know if you need any supplies, they're available.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible. When we do our Earth Day, because we're members of a regional waste authority, they provide us with the vests and the bags. So I could certainly get some of those vests that we can have readily available, Sophia. We'll work on that.
Yeah, we can get you a generic one. I have ones that say police across the back.
These
I
would be
can't-
just generic, bright, either lime or bright yellow. But Sophia, I will circle back with you, and if you don't hear from me too quickly, chase me.
Okay,
And
perfect. Thank you so much.
And you're
You're welcome.
definitely welcome to as many cones as you need.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next, we have John Talley.
Hi, everybody. It's John Talley and Bill Whitehead on Huckleberry Road. This is for Angelica. It's been so enlightening to hear about all the programs that you're working on for the elderly and for families in need. And I would just love to know how we as a community can help you in assisting in these programs and you know, doing clothing drives or assisting with driving someone to an appointment or whatnot. Is there a way to engage us a little further? Because I think a lot of us weren't really aware of this, what you're doing, and it's really inspiring, and we'd love to help.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. There's a lot of different ways people could help. I mean, when COVID first hit, I had to do a volunteer program because we didn't have, for example, Westport, Easton, and other towns had like an organization where they could just send the seniors or send the families to this organization to get volunteers. And I had to work closely with the police department of doing a background check because, you know, many of our seniors live alone and are isolated. And I didn't want to send a total stranger to their home. So we did a program where we had volunteers, you know, doing groceries or connecting with the seniors. And some of those volunteers kept in touch with the seniors. Yeah, either making monthly phone calls or checking in on them. And I try to pick, you know, the teenagers where they lived in the same street, so it would be a little easier. And another thing that we're trying to do, and this has been a really big challenge, is finding volunteers to help with driving the seniors. For example, we have a senior van and we have one driver, and we're sort of limited where we could go. And it's been a challenge of trying to create a program where we could say, hey, you know, this is a group of volunteers that could, if we're not able to provide transportation to Weston or to some other place, here's a list of volunteers that you could call. I think it's more logistical, that particular program. So we're trying to figure out like what would work or what wouldn't work. And the other thing that I would like to see, and this is where I kind of, where time management becomes an issue, is more outreach work of telling families and other people, neighbor to neighbor, of what the programs that might be available. For example, there's about 100 and I don't have the exact number, but about 120 residents that are part of the SNAP program, which is used to be known as the food stamps program. And there's like, say, about 18 seniors on that program, and the rest are families who are on that program. They couldn't tell me like how many children per family, if it's 3 children per one family or 2 children per another family, but it's a good amount of families, and they're not coming through my door. You know, so I have a limited, I mean, yes, I do work with a lot of families and a lot of seniors, but there are a lot more families that are part of the larger social services program through the state. I mean, some may have family support, that's why they're not coming through my door. Some might be for privacy issues, or others may not know, like, you know, that we have a food pantry, or we have gift cards, because sometimes the food pantry people don't feel comfortable using the food pantry, they prefer getting a gift card. So it's trying to do like more outreach work of letting people know, like, hey, this is what's going on. And sometimes if you see someone struggling but they're not saying it out loud, because sometimes you'll see certain signs. And once you see those signs, you could kind of say, hey, you know, there is help here in town. And sometimes it could be a subtle conversation of saying, look, you know, maybe you want to talk to, you know, social services and see what programs might be available. Because sometimes people, I mean, I've had referrals where they didn't realize I could help out with aftercare, you know, with the extended day program, with a scholar. Prior to United Way, there was a 50% discount I'm able to grant families. And then with United Way, some families are like, well, I don't qualify for state programs. I don't qualify for Husky or SNAP. So why would I qualify for this grant? And this grant was meant for families that after they pay their mortgage or their rent and your utility bills, there's really nothing left. So their child wasn't able to participate in sports or in a music program because it does add up. I mean, it gets very costly. And so I'm able to supplement with the $300 or even a little bit more of the grant funding. And if I can't use one program, I could get creative in using, you know, Salvation Army to supplement. So there's a lot of programs available. It does take some, you know, legwork of getting everyone connected to the right program for the situation. But I think the outreach work will be great. And maybe even calling our office and say, hey, I'm willing to volunteer with seniors. We always get a list of volunteers. You know, sometimes it's very busy with the volunteering, sometimes it's not as much, depending on the situation, because some seniors are like, oh, I'm okay right now. I don't need anyone coming to my home, but we never know. Like, for example, the snow shoveling this winter, normally we have the Boys and Girls Club help out with the seniors. And this year, it was the first year they couldn't get a parent volunteer to coordinate it. So it was a very tricky situation. And some seniors were able to get neighbors or friends to help out. And one or two was able to find a volunteer. I said, you know, these two seniors are an urgent situation because they really don't have anyone. You know, it's a large population of seniors here in town that who live alone and really don't have any family members. And if once you hit your 90s, you have to also remember they've lost a lot of their friends and their network. And many don't want to leave their home. And even if they wanted to leave their home, there's not a lot of options out there because, you know, affordable housing for seniors is almost like a 1 to 4 year wait list. So it's better for them to live in their home. I mean, and many of these, they come from a generation where they're very frugal with their finances, so they're mortgage free. But they only get Social Security. You know, they didn't work in finance, so they don't have a huge pension. So they only have their Social Security check and whatever they save to be able to make sure their taxes. I mean, I had one senior, she was in her late 90s and she was a widow in her 80s. And she said, well, I have a savings account. And she didn't qualify for a lot of programs in the beginning because of that savings, but she's like, I'm going to use this to pay my taxes each year. And she lived for a very long time. And it was getting to the point where, you know, the funds were getting depleted. So you see a lot of unique cases because when people hear Reading, they think, well, okay, how can these seniors or how can these families have financial hardship? But they're very unique cases. And you have a lot of families living with family members too. You know, there is support, but a lot of the family members living with their, you know, parents or grandparents living with their children, you know, they can't, it's not sustainable for them to support each other all the time. So they do need resources and need other programs that are available. So there's a lot of ways you can help. I mean, definitely call our office and reach out. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The question is from Amy Arnold. Amy, go ahead.
Yes, I'm still here. How are you? So from what I understand, and I could be wrong, so someone can correct me if I am wrong, but Reading has a AAA bond rating and there's almost $2.5 million in the reserve above the target of $8.6 million. Just Weston, every one of the DERG A schools has a lot higher budget, which I understand. I would be told that they're DERG A and they have a lot more money, but then I continue to look and it appears that Fairfield increased their budget by 5.4%, Newtown 4.35%, and they're DERG B. Then I kept looking and it appears that Bethel, who's a DERG D, actually adopted a budget proposal with higher spending than the superintendent actually asked. Then I still kept going, and Danbury actually has a 6.2 increase. So with almost $2.5 million over what we need in our reserves, I'm just wondering, what would be the amount of money in the reserve where we don't have to ask for a cut to the budget that the superintendent already deems a budget that's just maintenance? And when, you know, the superintendent says that I'll go back and I'll look and say, I will look for what will do the least amount of harm to our students, it still means that there will be harm to our students if we cut. So it is, you know, should the amount in that reserve budget be 3 million over what we're supposed to have, 5 million over? I'm just wondering what would be the necessary number so that we wouldn't have to ask for a cut. Thank you.
I'd say that's directed to Ward.
Yep, sounds like it was coming my way. Hi, Amy. So a word about the unassigned fund balance. In order to sustain our AAA credit rating, we need to have one of the many factors, but one of the most important factors is having adequate reserves. And the trade association, if you will, of municipal financial officers has a rule of thumb that municipalities ought to keep on hand in reserve approximately 2 months worth of total expenditures. So you'd get our total annual budget, 51 million or so, and you'd want to set aside at least 2 months worth of that. Now that's just a minimum. And one of the other factors is a comparison of our reserves versus the level of reserves in other towns. And it turns out that Connecticut municipalities, by and large, are more financially secure these days than they were at other times. And our town financial advisor and our town bond counsel have said that we should really be comfortably above the minimum that's recommended by the municipal financial officers of the state. In addition to that, as you know, there was a well-publicized settlement with Meadow Ridge where we're going to have to give back $2.65 million worth of taxes over a period of the next 3 years. That will create a hole in our budget. In addition to that, there are 2 other claims. One is an environmental claim, which is public knowledge, and there's another potential claim that is not public knowledge of indeterminate amount that we have to plan for. So it would be, in my opinion, highly irresponsible at this point to be using the reserves to any significant degree. It's not to say that it's impossible to use some of them, but with all that the town is facing at this time, I don't see a lot of support among other members of the Board of Finance and myself, although I'm just speaking for myself, for using the unassigned fund balance. I should say that it was some funds from the unassigned fund balance were used in the last 2 budgets, and I would venture to say that that was probably a mistake in retrospect, because we're probably lower than we should be at this point. I hope that addresses your question.
Okay, and then in terms of the other towns addressing, Weston actually said that they're especially putting more money into it to promote academic performance, improving their academic performance, and providing students with social emotional supports at this time after COVID. So while you think it might not be responsible in a monetary way, I don't understand how cutting $100,000 and making a budget that actually could hurt some people in Reading. I just don't see that as responsible either. So, other towns, so if we don't use the reserve for that 100,000 or whatever, we have a less than flat budget. We have a negative budget for the general education population in the K through 8. So, there is no increase there. And at a time when there probably should be an increase to take care of all of the issues that our children are facing after COVID. And just FYI, I no longer have children in the K through 8. Woohoo! So I have a different amount of skin in the game, but I still believe that we really need to invest in our children, especially at the youngest levels. And I hope we take that into account. There are different types of responsibility. So thank you.
Well, Amy, of course, everyone on the Board of Finance strongly believes in maintaining the strength of the schools in Reading. But when you invite comparisons to Durg A towns and other towns in the community, you have to recognize that our level of spending per student is at the very high end.
I don't recognize that as an equal, that we can't even compare Reading to Easton, and we know why. The buildings are different things are in the different accounts. Some actually put the spending of, the buildings into the school, some put it in the town. It's not a good comparison, and we all know why, and we go over that year after year. So I do know that Danbury has a 6.2 increase, and you can't compare the amount of money that we have to Danbury. So I think the $100,000 amounts to $20 a family, something like that, for the sake of our children. So we will agree to disagree on, what's the most important thing.
Well, I was going to go on to say that, Danbury, of course, has had a much higher influx of students. Their enrollment has surged. Ours has been relatively static. Plus, if I had to guess, their per pupil spending is probably a little more than half of ours. So it's a very complicated analysis, and I agree with you that there's no one metric that captures it all. But no decision has been made on the school budget in Reading. Our partners on the Board of Ed are still considering it. And there is, and that's a healthy dialogue that goes on every year. And anyway, I'm happy to answer more questions if you have them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. The school budget, I know there's a lot goes on now, and it will go on through before we vote, but it's good to see that, some people are involved and at least asking questions. It's always helpful. Lori Heiss.
Sorry, there we go. Cross Highway. I just wanted to add Cross Highway to the list of roads that have a ridiculous amount of, I don't care about the prime trucks, gigantic oversized trucks coming through, like terrifying. So if you're out looking, Chief, Cross Highway too, okay?
Okay, we'll add that to the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there a question? Lori?
The question was whether they could add Cross Highway to their list. He had mentioned Umpqua.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Let's see, we had
Colleen?
the Q&A. We don't have.
There was
Go
a
ahead.
Q&A. There's a Q&A that I answered, but there's another one there that would be more along the lines for Julia. From somebody, do you see that?
So
See
I'm
it.
trying not to get into using the Q&A and then also having people, the whole idea is I want it to be live, but I now don't, I did see that earlier, but I don't see the question now.
Yeah, I'm
in the
not
Q&A.
seeing. Oh,
no.
I see one. Any plans for affordable housing?
Is it still
Yeah.
there?
The
Yeah,
affordable
but-
housing question?
Yeah, I answered the other one regarding Kalia accredited. I just
Yep.
referenced it to you'll be able to answer that better than me.
Oh,
I should have not answered that one. Sorry, Jennifer.
okay. I'll ask the question now. I see. It looked at it as if it had been answered. Are there any plans for affordable housing in Reading?
Right, okay. So the town will be adopting an affordable housing plan. We're required to do that by state statute. I believe there's a public hearing coming up on April 24th. There's a ticker across the top of the Town of Reading's website. It's actually a planning commission public hearing. So we do not have affordable housing in Reading that meets our state mandated 10% requirement. Because of our makeup of watershed land and forested lands, the only suitable place for affordable housing, which requires density and public water and sewer, is Georgetown. So that has been the plan, that we would have affordable housing in Georgetown. It was part of the original master plan that failed in under the 2008 collapse. And it will, if it's my plan, our plan as a community, I think we probably all agree that Georgetown, when it is developed, should have affordable housing. I think a lot of people get frightened when they hear about affordable housing. Oh my goodness, what is that? So we use workforce housing. It's housing for teachers. It's housing for young adults. But so the short answer to your question is there an actual plan on the books right now? There is no plan, no developer for affordable housing, but the future looking plan is to have it in Georgetown as that property is developed. There are also already 2 incentive housing zones in the Georgetown area that could be developed by private developers. So that opportunity exists for a private developer who chooses to do that. It's actually in the property across from the Warma Barbecue, that side of Old Mill, could be developed for affordable housing. Does that answer it?
Well, I don't want to carry on the conversation via it.
No, I don't want to do that either. So,
what comes first if there's no plan? You just, you're working on a plan, I understand. Is that it?
Oh, yeah, I don't. Right. So the affordable housing plan will be adopted by June 1st. There will be a public hearing on it. And so I invite people to read it, to make comments on it, to come to the public hearing. And we'll go from there. The town will be adopting an affordable housing plan and filing that with the state by the start of June.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask some of the other attendees, I'm sure there's questions that we can ask of, like the town clerk. And I guess this is a good sign for Doug Hartline, because I thought with all of COVID, you were so busy and you haven't had one question regarding COVID and where it's going. So I'm going to ask a question. Where do you think it's headed, and what things do you think we need to do to be prepared?
Where it's headed is unknown. Just, I would say that we can see in the papers every day the articles written about COVID, doctors making their guesstimates, epidemiologists guesstimating where it might go. One of the last guesses was that Omicron was going to be a short and quick wave. It turned out to be a very steep and very impactful wave that really touched everybody just about. So that prediction was certainly way off. So we're really in the land of Las Vegas when it comes to making predictions. Being prepared, I would say that we've learned through all this to be flexible. We've learned that the way to administer vaccines at this time is really to lean on our pharmacies and have them be the ones always distributing. They're there 365 days a year, as opposed to setting up these one-time vaccination clinics. And likewise for vaccine testing or for COVID testing, many of us waited in line for 5 hours in a car line, either in Danbury or some other town. That we're actually leaning on, I should say CDC and also the state health department really has decided that the home test is the way to go. Let everybody test at home. They're pretty accurate tests, and most people know at this time what to do if they come up positive. Hopefully they'll respond properly and not go to work or go to school when they're ill, which is truly one of the most important things we can ever consider doing, aside from the usual washing of hands. Having the perfect attendance record in school should not be a badge of honor, because maybe that person probably most likely went to school ill a few times. So we're learning that, yes, we have to stay home from work, stay home from school when we're ill. Other than that, I mentioned about being flexible. I mean, we really have learned quite a few things locally. We're in the midst, health departments are in the midst of filling out their after action reports about what went well and what could be improved. A lot of things that went well were basically associated with the clinics, the things that were run, especially with the vax vans, that went very well. That's also probably a limited resource for vaccinating. That was actually funded by the state health department, but that certainly was a great lifeline that was offered to local towns, and certainly Reading took advantage of that. And in terms of improvement, I think that I'm trying to think what one thing we'll never do again is when we have the test kits, 500 test kits, and knowing that 6,000 people want a test kit and running a first come, first serve event, we will never, ever do that again. I can promise everybody that. Living and learning. So that's about it. I would think that people have learned to be flexible. They've learned to do their Dracula cough, thank goodness. And the kids have been very, very good in school in terms of learning and being able to comply. That's been such a great situation. I've been very thankful that when we allowed everybody to go to school without a mask, for those who didn't want to, that's actually worked out very well. And we weren't sure what was actually going to happen, if that would produce a big jump in numbers of COVID positive cases. There might have been a little bump in there, but it really has not been an issue at all. And we're so thankful that the kids can be unmasked and smiling and having more fun than what they had the previous 2 years. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you did in the last 2 years. Yeah. Okay, Sophia Shanahan.
Hi, sorry. It's me again. You guys are going to start cutting me off. Okay. So my last question for tonight is about the tennis courts and the pickleball project. I have a couple different questions. I'll just go through them. Why is private funding not a part of the tennis courts project? It was 20% private when they were built. What is the anticipated number of uses per year of the courts? And do you have any usage data on Parks and Rec programs and the Heritage Center programs? And in planning to take out such a sizable long-term bond investment in tennis and pickleball courts, do you have a sense of what the cost per use is and how many will use these fields per year on your projections? Thank you.
Okay, I think that's a question for Rob Blick. Hi, Rob. Did you hear the questions?
We don't have data on the tennis courts, although we have tennis camps and tennis classes that are very well attended. The We do know that there's been a rise of pickleball in town, and they've been using the tennis courts even with the poor weather and the poor condition of the courts. We do know a lot of people have been using the high school courts because our courts are they're in poor shape. So we don't have any details except for the tennis, camps that are very popular and the tennis lessons that are popular, and that we always see people out there. We don't collect it. Yeah.
Okay, could you answer about why why there's not an option for this to be included in private funding?
The tennis courts needed repair, and we put it in the budget. We do have the pickleball tournament that has been, this will be the second annual one, and they have indicated they'd be willing to contribute towards the cause of replacement. But we haven't explored that fully.
I may be able to help with that a little bit, Rob. Ward Mizuko, member of the Board of Finance. I don't know about the private financing issue, but in terms of capital expenditures generally, my sense is that we have really kicked the can down the road on a lot of public improvements, where there are town roofs, or roofs of town buildings, roofs of school buildings. There are improvements that are overdue in the town hall and the community center. We have run so many lean budgets for so many years that I think we're going to have to face up to a lot of these responsibilities before they become even more costly to repair. That will all be discussed Monday night, April 4th at the Board of Finance Zoom call. So anyone who has questions or comments on all of the proposed capital expenditures should come out for that. I should also note as a general proposition that the Board of Finance is mindful that we've hit bottom in terms of interest rates, and it looks like the trend is heading back up. So if there are things, for which we might need to issue bonds, we probably want to do them sooner rather than later. Not to bond for things that are unnecessary, but for those things that are necessary, we should probably issue bonds while interest rates are still relatively low. Hope that helps.
So Ward,
Okay.
Okay, Julia.
Yes.
I'll just add Sophia to the process. So they are public courts, and I know as Rob, we don't have scan cards. They're open courts. Anybody can go on the court at any time. You don't have to reserve the court. So for that reason, it is hard to track usage. Unlike the library, they get very good data on how many books are borrowed and so on and so forth. We have talked about a scanning card system for the Heritage Center to track visits. So that's something that we could potentially do. What I can tell you anecdotally is that when we closed everything for COVID, some of the most forcefully vocal folks were those who were upset that we closed the tennis courts. They're public courts. You don't have to go to Four Seasons. You don't have to pay a lot of money to go to the Weston Racket Club. They're public courts, and we should keep them in good working condition. If the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen agree that this should go forward to the voters, it would be a separate line on the referendum in May, and it would be up to the public to vote yes or no. So that would ultimately be a decision made by the voters. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I've just heard from a lot of members of the community. People are a little bit confused about the large numbers about the pickleball courts and tennis courts. And I know a lot of people have wondered why we can't just refinish them versus, I think, what is it, over 500,000 to completely redo them. So I am aware that it's going to be in a referendum, but I appreciate the details and you guys answering the questions. Thank you very much.
Sophia, there was one thing I just wanted to add, why we didn't try to repair them. Last year, we did allocate money to do repair work on the courts, but it was determined that that money would have essentially been money down the drain. Rob, do you want to just say a quick word on that?
Yeah, we've been repairing cracks on the court for 45 years now, and
Wow.
that's quite a long time to be kicking the can, as Ward said. But a complete crack repair and repainting of the courts last year was well over 50,000, and to do that again would be more like 70,000 at this point, and that wouldn't solve any of the, the unevenness of the courts, the fact that the posts are starting to come up. This is a post-tension concrete that would be crack-free for 25 years. This is the right way to do it, and it would be just a waste of money to repair cracks and try to cover it up, as we've done for so many years.
Thank you. I just want to include in this question for anyone who wants to answer. Do you have public-private partnership projects in Reading? Kind of goes along with her question about why can they contribute to it?
Yeah. We have in the past had nonprofit groups who come and want to raise money for things. But in general, the large public amenities that we have, and we're Reading, so we don't have many, are funded by public dollars. The most recent addition to the community center grounds is the playground for preschool age children. That was funded by a town, a grant from the town, and supplemented by private fundraising. So that is an example of a public-private partnership. And I think we do have, as Rob has pointed out, and I know also personally, a very active group of pickleball players who held fundraising, did their first tournament last year and bought nets and all sorts of things. And I have no doubt that they'll be very successful in their fundraising, but we don't set a bar. And these are public facilities, so we need to maintain them.
Okay, thank you. So Amy Arnold.
Hi. So I confess, my husband's a tennis player and we actually do want the tennis courts. So not only do I want a high or a higher Board of Education budget, I also would like that to be funded. But my question is, how many bids did we get? Because from what we understand, and are we adding courts? Because based on the tension, the type of court that we want to put in, I think the average cost for that is $75 a court. So that would be $300 for 4 courts. I'm just not sure. It just seems like a very high number for what the amount of courts that we already have. So are we adding courts? Is that why the number is so high?
I got 3 independent quotes that were all in the 550 to 570 range just for replacing with post-tension concrete. And we were proposing to have 2 dedicated pickleball courts. So we would have an additional courts. Basically, the fundraiser that the pickleball community did last year, and they have one scheduled for June 11th this year, raised money for portable nets and a box to store them in, so there's 2 portable nets that can be set up on each tennis court on the 4 existing tennis courts. We were proposing to to replace the 4 existing tennis courts and to add 2 dedicated ones. It's a tight fit, but we think that with the rise of pickleball, it would be great if they can have 2 courts dedicated that didn't need to be set up every time.
Okay, I was just wondering that the price for just 4 courts seemed really high, but we're adding 2 additional. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would actually like to have Michelle Grandy, Town Clerk, and maybe give us a little info as to what we can do to make life easier come voting time. Is there anything that we as residents of Reading can do?
Yes, get out there and vote. Make your voices heard. We hear all this talk before the referendum, and referendum day, we have a very so I would encourage everybody to get out there and vote. One of the problems with voting for the referendum by absentee ballot is that I cannot mail absentee ballots for a referendum. We can only hand deliver them to someone who comes into the office, or they could designate someone to pick up their ballot for them, and we could give it to them and they could return it. And it's a very short amount of time. I have them available as soon as I can. I don't have to have them available until 5 days after the town meeting. I generally have them available before that, but you really only have about a 2-week period to actually vote by absentee ballot prior to the election. So you can file your application at any time, and then we can call you when the ballots are in and ready to be delivered to you, that you can pick up. We're there, 8:30 to 5:30, 3 days a week, 8:30 to 6 on Saturday. I'm on Saturday and Thursday. Usually on Saturday, I do some absentee ballot voting if it's called for the Saturday before. And just call my office anytime. The forms will be online. All the information, the dates with regard to absentee ballot, I'll have it on my page and in the news and announcements. I try and get it out there as soon as I have it, so that people can, make best use of their vote. But I encourage everybody to get out there and vote. It's really important.
And Megan and Sarah, what can we do to help the registrars?
Yes, I'm gonna chime in here too. So this is perfect because we just sent out canvas letters and we had around, I want to say like 300 estimate come back, either not returned by the post office or not returned, or they were returned by the post office. And these people get put into our inactive file. So I encourage everybody to periodically check your voter registration. There is a website via the Secretary of the State, and you can check your registration there. And if you don't come up, then contact our office and we can figure out if you're in the inactive file or if you need to register to vote. So coming up voting, definitely check your voter registration prior to any kind of election if you plan on voting.
Just if you go on the Town of Reading website under How Do I, on the right-hand side, there's a little question mark and it says, how do I? The very first item on that is, it says, how do I apply for an absentee ballot and check my voter registration? All the links are there. If you find any of them broken, please let me know, because Secretary of State has been updating those. But it's pretty easy to find the forms. Just go to the top of the ribbon and click on How Do I, and it will give you the information on voter registration, applying for an absentee ballot, when the referendum will be held, everything you need to know.
Thank you. And now, as we're coming towards the end, I want to ask, each of the panelists if they want to offer, anything further, whether it's if you need volunteers, how to reach out, if there's any other information you want to share before we are at the end of our time. So it's not required. It's only if you'd like to. Go ahead, Megan and
So I'm
Sarah,
Megan, registrar voter, and Sarah's over here with Luna. And we are always looking for poll workers. We have a great group right now, but we're always looking for more hands at the election. So if you're interested, send us over an email. Our email is registrar@townofreadingct.org.
Thank you for saying that. I actually had a son who did it and had a great time. A long day,
Yes.
but he had a great time.
Great. We do have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
I just wanted to mention, I mentioned it before, we're in need of some lifeguards. If you know anybody who is certified or is willing to get certified, have them give me a call or an email. Thanks.
That's another great job in town, actually.
I know you know
Ward.
that.
Ward.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. I just wanted to remind everybody once again about the budget votes on May 3. And one thing I've noticed over the years is that people take an intense interest in all of the budgets, in the month of March. But there are 11 other months of the year where a lot of these issues that affect the budgets are discussed at the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Board of Education. And I really hope that everyone in the community will consider getting more involved, attending meetings, whether on Zoom or in person, and watching what goes on, because informed voters are in a position to help guide the best decisions in our community. So, and again, thank you to the League for getting us all together tonight.
Thank you. Julia?
I just want to thank you, Ward, also about the budget. The selectmen will meet next week to review our budget and make any changes that the Board of Finance deems necessary. I also want to invite everyone to join me for my brown bag lunches. I do those every month, the first Wednesday. So we have one coming up next week. So it's 1 o'clock at Town Hall, kid friendly. Just come on, bring your kids, bring a lunch, and we can talk about anything you want to talk about, including the budget, including tennis courts, trees, garbage, roads, anything. But I would love for you to come and have lunch. And it's just a free and open discussion of any subject that you'd like to have. I used to do also a first Saturday a month coffee. But I think it was hard for people to get to, especially if you had kids doing sports during the spring season. So we'll revisit that. I'd like to give the public more opportunities to meet with me and discuss some of these bigger issues. So, but it'd be great if you join me at lunch next week, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Chief O'Donnell?
Yes. I always finish, if anybody had any questions, they felt like they didn't want to ask in this form, they could send me an email. Also, regarding the traffic complaints, we do have forms on our website, but if you don't want to go through that, you can actually send me an email with your name, address, nature of complaint, email, or a phone number, and I will fill that form out for you. I'll forward to Sergeant Livingston. For instance, if it's a speeding complaint, we send out the sign. What I do is when the person makes a complaint about that, I do actually send them the results from the speed sign. It's kind of interesting. And it shows the time frames, the speeds, the average speed of the road. And we usually, if you'll see the sign out there and it's not showing a speed, we usually run it without the speed limit coming up, and then we run it another 5 to 7 days with it. So it gauges, you'll see the difference between with the sign lit up and the sign not. So if anybody wants to do that, feel free to send me the email form instead of going on the website. I don't have an issue filling it out.
Thank you. Doug Hartline?
Yes, I just want to mention that yesterday FDA approved getting a booster for the booster. So you can go to the Town of Reading ct.org website. On the home page, you can scroll down to the bottom and it says COVID vaccine sites, and you can click on that, put your zip code in, and it'll tell you all the locations, and there are many, that are providing COVID shots, and you get your boosters for those who qualify.
Thank you. That's good to know. Stephanie I know you'd like
Yeah.
to.
I'd also love to just encourage people to participate with the Board of Education. We have a meeting tomorrow evening at John Reed Middle School at 7 p.m. And we also have a meeting next Tuesday, also at 7 p.m. at John Reed Middle School. And to people who perhaps enjoyed a community connection with one of our schools, we really want to get that going again. So whether we're engaging with our seniors in the community or through another community project, we're really looking forward to, again, re-engaging with the community. We have two wonderful new principals in Reading, Mrs. Melissa Labrasciano at Reading Elementary School and Mrs. Megan Ward at John Reed Middle School. So they are two primary contacts for our schools.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to?
I was gonna say something.
Go ahead, Angelica.
Anything regarding social services, feel free to contact my office, whether you want to volunteer or you have a concern for a neighbor. I do wellness visits as well. And regarding senior programs, the first exercise or art program is always free to try it out. And we do have certain programs that are early in the mornings, and it's open to, non-seniors. The price might be a little bit different, but we've had a very popular bar class where some of the moms, after they drop off their kids, they have participated in the bar class. So it's a nice program. So we have a lot of different options as well. So feel free to call us.
Thank you. And something very important I want to do is behind that League of Women Voters sign on your lower, this is Cole Tucker Walton. And I'll tell you, none of this would happen if it wasn't for Cole. And I just want to make sure a big congratulations to Cole. I mean, for all of us, he's been invaluable. He's on the board of the League of Women Voters, and he's just been incredible. So I'm so happy with how this has come about and how smoothly it went. And that's because I insisted he be in the same room as me, so I didn't mess up. Okay, in closing, I really want to thank all of you, our town representatives, for taking the time and for answering the questions. It means a lot for all of us to see you here and to see you addressing a whole host of different questions. And also to all those who have attended, it's great to have you here. It's great to hear your thoughtful questions, and you raise issues that are important to all of us. And I think the town does a great job, but there's always room for improvement, and some of these issues that come to light help us improve. And I also want to thank just the League of Women Voters, the whole group of them, Kim O'Reilly, who hopefully will do a little bit of a closing statement, who's our president, who is just an incredible leader, and all of the people who volunteer. It's really a good, wise, thoughtful, driven, wonderful group of people, and we invite more people to join us so we can accomplish even more. And Kim?
Yeah, I just want to thank all our panelists for being here this evening. I know you all work long days, and for those of you who are on the volunteer committees, this is your second job. So thank you to all the people on our committees who are, either here on the panel tonight or working on all these many boards and commissions for our town. We couldn't run our town with all our outer volunteers and our wonderful town employees. So we really appreciate it. This has been a lovely dialogue. I appreciate the wide variety of questions and the respectful and considerate atmosphere that we created this evening. Reminds me why I really love this town. I've been connected to it since the mid-60s. My grandparents had a home in Reading Center. My family had a weekend home, and I've been here full time for 30 years. So we would love to get more people involved in the league and more new families get involved in town overall. And we will be sharing the recording of this and hope we reach people who are new to the community to get to know more about our town. So thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.